Jim, so you know, the other one of our last press conferences when I mentioned Steve Weiss as being the best dressed man, it was halfway through that press conference that I saw you sitting maybe either right beside him or a couple down, and the whole time I'm thinking, I can't believe I left Jim Hill out. He's consistently
No. You were right. You
day
were right to
after
begin with.
day.
No, believe me.
You certainly didn't let us down today, man.
I didn't know this was a roast today.
No doubt. No doubt. So I think if I open on anything, I know we'll get to it. Yes, it's a different draft. We start in the third round, not the first. I'm sure you'll ask questions. We'll get to it. If there's one thing I'd love for you to remember and is from our, I call them the over-the-top guys, from our guys in the scout player personnel department down to the area scouts. Somewhere along the way in this thing, I'm going to mention them by name. Love for you guys to at least write something about them because they don't get recognized often. To our coaching staff, I mean, it's been a collaborative effort. They've worked really, really hard. When we ended the season, got to our postseason meetings, we came to this thing with a vision of what we wanted to do to improve our roster from a player acquisition standpoint. And at that point, that could be done in the draft, free agency, trades. 23 or pick number 23 was still on the table. And as the off season evolved, things changed and adjusted, and it's because you can do that because of the preparation of our area scouts, of our directors, of our coaching staff, of our pro scouting staff. So I'm sure along the way I'll sprinkle in some stories about those guys, but that's what I want you to remember today of anything is, yes, it is different, but the preparation's the same, and those guys who don't get mentioned a lot deserve a ton of credit for making this thing work.
Yeah, a lot of the same. I think what's so comforting about just this situation here is, Les talks about great collaboration, and that starts with the great communication that exists between our coaching staff, our personnel. Really can't say enough about Les, his leadership that he's provided with his staff to be able to, be as diligent as they've been with regards to the draft preparation, then the coaches being involved in that. They've made it really seamless, especially, just for myself, being able to tailor it down and get guys tiered to where we have a very specific sequential approach that we want to take at that third round pick, with some of the things in the fourth and then leading into the sixth and seventh, and, the sixth round picks that we have. But then in addition to that, you talk about some of the moves we've been able to make this offseason. It's a reflection of a lot of people. Les did an excellent job. You can't say enough about Tony Pastores and Kevin Demoff as well, being able to make it fit, because to be able to acquire players of the caliber that we've had, there is an element of being in alignment with the structure, with the cap, being able to still have a long-term vision where these aren't short-sighted one-year answer type things that we envision with the players. And that's all, credit to them and being able to have that planning and be able to acquire players that fit within the framework of what we want to do, building into our second year together as a staff, and really excited about that as we move into the draft this weekend.
Coach, for you and Les both, with all the acquisitions that you made during the offseason, you've got a lot of people who should be starters here. Is the approach and is the thinking to get the best person possible when your draft pick comes around?
Great question. I think it's a combination of both, in that, all right, we do have some specific, I would call it needs, or even I'd rather call it roles than just a need, because each side of the ball, special teams, offense, defense, and then within the position groups has there's a role to fill. And what you do try to do is line the players up, and you focus on some that definitely can come in and fill that role immediately based on their let's call it their physical traits, and then their football acumen and all of those things, and it depends on what you're looking for. So, but I do think when you do get into the third and fourth round, I would be honest in saying it's probably very hard to say you have a vertical, this player at this position's better than this player, let's call it 4 picks. The 87th player on our board is better than the 92nd player on our board. It usually they're of similar ability, and at that point in time, you might go to the player that fills a role better than others.
Yeah, a lot of the same. You look at it even yesterday, we're sitting there playing out different scenarios, and part of that decision-making entails, how does this person fit within the framework of what we already have in place? What would their role be if things work out the way that we, kind of see them fitting into, whether it be defense, offense, or on special teams? And that kind of helps us tier it off and be able to find what's the best fit for the Rams, at those picks.
For either of you guys or both, last year you were able to hit, third, fourth rounds. You got a Cooper Kupp, John Johnson, Sampson, those guys. How does the talent pool that you could project to be in that third or fourth round, how does it compare to last year? Is it similar? Is it better or worse?
It's interesting. Because we focused a lot on those rounds, you feel like, yes, we're excited about picking in those rounds, and it's all going to depend on if some of the guys we're excited about falls, to that area of the draft. You never know that. You can project. You can use all the analytics in the world, but as we do know, the draft, Thursday night, Friday night, and you don't know what I like to call the other 31 teams the enemy. You never know what they're going to do, so they do have a say. But we feel like we've at certain positions and all of that really focused on that part of the draft and excited for it to get here. But
so when you guys rank your players, and with this year, let's just say who you have at 20th, and he would fit a need, but you don't have a first-round pick. If you saw him slide, at what point would you say we need to trade up? What would have to happen for, in this scenario, guy who's at 20, and here you are at 45, and he still hasn't been picked?
Yeah, I think it's all predicated situationally on how we see them fitting, where they rank on the board. I think if there's anything, especially that I've learned over the last year, is what a good job. Les has been instrumental in a lot of the trades that we've made. They have a really good feel for, okay, what can we do, whether it be to move back or to move forward based on how we value a player. So it's just like almost, it's like his version of calling a game. You have different scenarios or different coverages or fronts you're trying to attack, and you want to make sure that you have answers accordingly. But when you do the preparation, I think that's something that naturally plays itself out based on how we have guys slotted. There's definitely a combination of where do we feel like we are at this position, and would this person be someone that would come in and provide us something different than what we have, or give us something that a specific role gives us a value, or something that you really just can't typically find. There's certain spots and positions or difference makers, if you will, that definitely dictate a different response, but I think it's all predicated on the way they prioritize them, and then knowing how much we can go up or move back, and kind of how we value that.
If I piggybacked off of that, it would be what you're doing in this draft in particular. You may give up, let's call it multiple picks, multiple players that fill multiple roles or have a shot to fill multiple roles for just one player. Because if you move from 87 to 45, it takes some ammo. Yeah. Now, I think the more realistic thing is all of a sudden the guys fall into the, let's call it late 60s, 70s, and things like that. You start looking at those opportunities.
Les and Sean, without obviously identifying players, you did mention specific needs. So what are some of the specific needs or roles that you guys are looking at? And secondly, can you explain what went into the thinking, or how the process goes in terms of exercising fifth-year options on Todd Gurley and Marcus Peters?
Well,
that happened. That did happen.
It did happen. We were going to announce it here today, but as y'all well know, things travel fast in this business. But yes, we did exercise those options. Talked to those two guys this morning. Let them know that, and we did do that. For the answer to the other thing, Gary, I do think, but as I called the other 31 teams the enemy, not sure they're listening to this press conference or not, but I don't think we're going to let them know exactly, what we're looking at. But I think all of y'all have common sense and can figure out maybe where we're going with that, but I don't know if we're going to give that up. But Todd speaks for itself, right? I mean, that's, what he's done since he's been here, especially let's call it his rookie in this year. So that's the reason we went into exercising his fifth-year option. And when we made the trade for Marcus, we do, foresee a long-term future with him. So we were definitely going to, check that box as well.
Yeah, a lot of the same. Feel very fortunate to have had a year working with Todd. Continue to come away impressed with just the consistency at which he approached every single day. Obviously, the talent is there, but I think the appreciation for the practice, the meeting room, all those things. What a smart, special player he is. So excited to continue to be able to work with him and wanted to be able to do that. And then like Les mentioned, when you look at what Marcus has put on tape over the course of his career, extremely productive player. And then in the really the week and a half now that we've been around Marcus, couldn't be more impressed with just his attention to detail in the meetings, listening to him talk with Coach Pleasant and Coach Evero in the meeting room, even with Akib and him have a lot of dialogue. Very smart football player, into it. You can see this is a guy that loves football. A lot of great feedback we've gotten from Ted and his staff and Reggie with the interaction and the way he's gone about it. So he's doing all the little things the right way right now, and that was kind of what goes into the decision behind both those guys, and we're excited about it.
Les, how about a general opinion on this edge class, maybe this linebacker class compared to previous classes that you've seen?
That's an interesting question. Only it's going to be subjective now in let's call it depending on what kind of defense you run, whether you're 4-3, 3-4, you got different fits. So what you try to do, I think there's going to be an edge guy go really early. I think that guy's getting talked about well at NC State, but I think there's always a poster child nowadays. I do think the nice thing about the draft, it's very publicized, it's good content. As in your business that certain people draw clicks and everybody's worried about either the first 32 picks or the top 10, and some of those guys like Bradley Chubb get mentioned over and over again, and you do somewhat forget that maybe there is other guys other than him that rush the passer. And I do think every year the draft shows that there are guys that aren't just household names that can come in and make an impact, and that's the goal of every team and us trying to find those guys.
You guys, I know you make the trade for a reason, but was it hard emotionally for either one of you to get rid of that first-round pick again after not having the last 2 years too? Was it?
You want to go, Sean?
When it came to Brandon Cooks, no. We felt very good about that. And I think, you guys know how we felt about it, but I think when you take all things into consideration, Rich, what we were able to acquire for what we were giving up, we felt really strong about it. We feel really good about Brandon Cooks, and much like what we mentioned about Marcus, Brandon has been, the same in that first week and a half, and I know the quarterbacks are excited when they've done some stuff on their own, just being able to work with him, and same with the receivers. So I think if you told me we would get a player like that at 23, I'd be throwing a pool party, and I don't even have a pool, Rich.
If I piggybacked off that, Sean and I talk a lot. Picks on paper, they're different when you're looking at them on paper. But I always, let's call it relate them to like buying a car. As soon as you drive them off the lot, now you have the car, and they either appreciate or depreciate it over time. But so to go back to Lindsay's looking at me like this guy's an absolute whack job, which is probably true.
I thought it was a nice comparison.
Yeah, we get it, but as Sean said, to be able to say at 23 you can get a proven receiver that fits a scheme, fills a role for us, we thought was very important.
Les,
I would really know your real bubble, Lindsay. I don't think you were thinking economics class.
Les, earlier this year, Kevin Demoff said at MIT that the new CBA makes development, much harder. How has that these changes affected your job, the job on the scouting side of the house? Just anything about how the new CBA has changed the way that you guys do your jobs.
I say all the time, we got to adapt and evolve. And yes, it is true. You have less time to develop, but it's also true that the college game is different than the NFL game. So you got to figure out that space in between, and the better teams will do that. But it also means sometimes you draft a player and he doesn't play right away, and that's okay. I mean, there's a rhyme and reason for every move. There's an intent to every move, but because you don't want to put that player out there until he's ready, or his confidence meter may go down. But that's an interesting, let's call it quagmire that we have going on. Is less time to develop, but also games are very different, and what they're asking guys to do in college compared to here.
Yeah, I think there's just, like Les mentioned, there's a premium on making sure you maximize every moment. With specifics to where we're at right now. We know that we've got 2 weeks in phase one. We've got to make sure we do a great job. Every minute's accounted for in the meetings. Our strength coaches are doing an excellent job with the time they have allotted in that 4-hour window. And then when we're able to get on the field for 3 weeks with the drills and things of that nature, it's the same type of deal, and then with the OTAs. But I think it's just about maximizing it. Everybody's operating under the same collective bargaining agreement. We got to do a great job kind of identifying what our players do best and developing them in a nature that fits with the framework of kind of the amount of time that we have and where we project them to be by the time these games roll around.
Les and Sean, barring some real aggressive types of moves to try and move up, how will you guys spend that first day and a half of the draft? I mean, do you monitor every single pick coming off the board, or do you kind of walk away for a while? I mean, you're gonna have a lot of time on your hands before 87 comes up.
I think we're taking ideas on what should we do with, but I do think it's interesting. This time of year too, you're focused on the picks, and you got to do some administrative stuff. And James Gladstone, who's an assistant of mine, is trying to figure out when people should be here, when they shouldn't, what should you wear. And I'm looking at it going, I don't know. I mean, when should they come? Let's just skip Thursday, but let's be casual. So you're trying to come up with those ideas. But I think it'll be fun. Let's call it day one, to sit back and actually see how that whole top five, all the quarterback drama plays out, because we're not in that business, we're not in that mix, we're not picking in that realm. So to be honest with you, I really don't know what's going to happen. That'll be fun, and I think it's always fun to go, okay, let's see who might have fallen to 23, and we'll have fun looking at maybe who we would have drafted if that would have been the case. And then I think what happens then on Friday becomes a little, as you get closer to 87, it becomes a little clearer of, okay, how things are going, or is some of the players that you thought were going to be there going to fall? Are they not? Are they going earlier? And you start strategizing. Do you move up, or do you move back and try to accumulate some more picks? So I think that happens, let's call it closer to Friday night than Thursday night.
Yeah, a lot of the same, Gary. It's similar to last year, where I think if you weren't fortunate enough to work in football, I'd probably be watching it anyway. So we'll watch it. We'll be in tune with it, just because you're still a fan of the game, and seeing what some of these other teams are doing with the picks, and then how that affects their roster. But it'll be exciting, and I think that's the unique thing that Les mentioned. It was real similar to last year, is that after that first round, for us last year, it was figuring out what you want to do with that 2 spot and playing some of those scenarios. Now for us, it'll be after that second round finishes up, and then after 2 and 3, then you get a chance to really have a good feel for how you want to use those 3 4th round picks that we have the next day. And again, going back to Les and his staff and our coaching staff with their preparation, feel really good about a lot of scenarios that could play itself out. But we know at the end of the day, we're going to come away with some good football players that we expect to help our team.
On that too, I think if I transition that to be able to mention some names, I know Brian Zanders, who came over from the Lions, he would probably tell you, we'll be in there watching more film on Thursday night and Friday night, because I give the group Brian Zanders, Taylor Moore, and they're both senior executives. Brad Holmes, who's our director of college scouting, and interesting with Brad, he's got his first child due May 2nd. So you can imagine being a director of college scouting. This is your career, and I haven't yet, but I've almost mandated that he stay back. But we've worked out kind of a collaborative deal that he could come in Friday and then get out of here, red eye Saturday. So and then J.W. Jordan, who we call him our director of draft management, but he really ties up every piece of data that comes in and makes sure we're aware of, hey, what we need to do on each player. We got a assistant director of college scouting right now, Ted Monago, and I guarantee you right now he is on the phone somewhere out there talking to some coach, getting one last, because as you get closer to the draft, the questions you have on the players, they get narrow and narrow, and I guarantee you right now, and he's got so many contacts. Same with Marty Barrett, who's a national scout and came over from us last year from the Philadelphia Eagles. Those guys that just know college, coaches and sources, and you're one last, hey, thumbs up, thumbs down, this is what we're thinking. So, but I can tell you this, that we've spent a lot of time in December and February and now in April sitting in that draft room watching films, trying to separate, let's call it rank a guy 87th or 89th. That gets, seems easy, but it gets hard when you're at that level.
Sean, last year in the your first year in the war room with Les, what did you learn? You talked about collaboration earlier in the presser. What did you learn about Les last year, first time in the war room?
Yeah, I think didn't really learn as much, but I think what it did is it reiterates that the preparation paid off. Being able to play a bunch of different scenarios, make some moves where you're able to be able to acquire some additional picks or get some different spots, and then I think when you look at the types of players that we were able to acquire, very specific approach where it was a combination of kind of what you guys asked earlier, is a combination of some of the the roles that we were looking for, but then also the caliber of player that we were able to acquire. And I think when you look at how many guys on our draft class contributed to some of the success we had last year, that's a credit to Les and his staff. I thought the coaches did a nice job being able to develop them as well. But what you learned is that the preparation paid off, and there was a lot of different scenarios that he had gone through, and he was ready to roll. And it just continued. You come away impressed with the way that he went about it.
How did you decide, and why did you decide to send Roger Saffold down to make the announcement of your third-round pick?
That's a great question. I'm going to just be totally honest with you. I did not make that decision. Sean?
It was all my decision, Jim. No, we just found that out. But I do think that artists probably thought, this guy's a great advocate of our team, which he absolutely is. Great season. I think when you look at just a guy that's played on our team going into his 9th year, coming off an all-pro season and being able to play at that left guard spot, a guy that represents, one of those players that represents what's right about that locker room and those players. Roger Saffold's one of those guys, and he's kind of one of the glue guys on our team. So that was probably why you picked him, right, Artis? There you go.
That's thinking on your feet. I actually was walking by our break room, what have you, and I saw Doug Marrone on the Good Morning Football show, and they were asking about the new uniforms. And as Doug said, he says, I don't know if y'all have seen me on the sidelines, but y'all got to know I'm the last person in the building that needs to be asked about fashion. So
On a lighter,
he gave credit to the marketing department. I'm going to give that to either artists or marketing.
On a lighter note, there was a YouTube video that came out today about a transfer quarterback from Ventura. I think it was Dre Vogue was this kid's name. Your thoughts on that young quarterback?
Sean, you're giggling, so I'm going to let you take this one.
You know what? Billy Nays, my guy, showed me a little glimpse of it. I haven't had a chance to see the entire video, but it looked like he had a lot of fun with that. And, I think that just goes to show, what is a great trait that Jared has is he's got an even-keeled demeanor, disposition, but he also doesn't take himself too serious. To be able to go and have fun with something like that, I think speaks to the humility and why he's a fun guy, why his teammates believe in him, why you enjoy being around him. But I can't wait to check it out. It gave Billy a couple good gut laughs, and I heard the guys talking about it. So look forward to seeing that whole video. Did you see it?
It's again when it hit me, but I did see a blip. When you get in the draft room and there's the world's going on and you're in there watching film and you're oblivious to everything going on. But I do remember seeing something where Jared Goff went undercover back at Cal, and then when you said that and he giggled, I knew, okay, he knows what's going on here. But I put 2 and 2 together. Probably about 10 seconds later than I should have, but.
I think this was a recent one at Ventura College.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was pretty good. I think he made a couple lines to the players that he wasn't joking. Maybe he was, but it looked like it was fun. Did it for Red Bull. Fogue,
get-
golf backwards.
I'm about 10 years behind
Dre Fogue.
pop culture.
There you go.
I'm a decade behind. It's okay. Getting older.
But we'll be ready at 87.